Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning back into Just Curious with Sara. So anyone that knows me knows I'm obsessed with skincare. I've always been this way, reading in on the newest stuff. And my goal was always not to look like someone else, but to maximize the potential that already exists in my own skin. And that's where Dr. Bowe enters. I met her over a decade ago when she was a guest, and I used to follow her out of the hallway, asking her 1,000 questions. Then I read up on her, and then I was able to eventually start seeing her. And I have never stopped following everything she turns out because she's really, and I mean this lovingly, nerdy. And so I will text her, I will email her, something will cross my mind. Hey, if I feel tingling, does this mean? And I cannot get enough of Dr. Bowe. So if there was ever a time when she needed to be here, it's when it's Just Curious with Sara, because I'm highly curious. You're going to know she's a renowned dermatologist, founder of Dr. Whitney Bowe Beauty. She's also the person behind Skin Cycling, which is all over the online world, TikTok, etc. So please welcome one of my favorite people, Dr. Bowe. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Bowe. I'm so happy to have you because there couldn't be something I'm more curious about. Everyone knows you, it's a name thrown around a lot with people that care about skin and kind of what does Dr. Bowe do, shopping the shelf, all of it. But before we get in all of this, I want you to break down where you're from, how you got into this, where did you study, kind of from fetus to now.
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in New York. Fast forward, I went to Yale for undergrad, graduated top of my class, total nerd, as you know. And then I got a full tuition merit-based scholarship to University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. I actually got a bunch of different scholarships to go to different medical schools, but I chose Penn. So lucky that I went there. I loved it. So I've been a practicing board certified dermatologist for, over a decade. So my private practice is primarily focused on aesthetics and cosmetics and very heavily procedural. But what's unique about the practice is that I take a three-dimensional approach to the skin. So I'm always talking to my patients about their diet, their supplements, their stress levels, their sleep, their exercise, how all of those things are impacting the skin as well. And I'm also a research scientist, which I think a lot of people don't even know about me. So I have over 40 peer-reviewed scientific publications, book chapters, lectured internationally on my research. So I have that sort of clinical, epidemiological, and basic science background as well. And I just became the founder and CEO of a skincare brand, which I launched, less than a year ago. So wearing yet another hat there where I'm, just constantly focused on product formulation and ingredient selection, and really diving into the science there. So that's kind of how I got where I am now. Probably some of the most impactful things in my background is that I was really, really sick when I was 10 years old. I was in and out of the hospital that whole year, fighting for my life. And I ended up I went to the Bahamas with my family, and I had conch chowder, which was like a delicious conch chowder, but it ended up landing me with a parasite. And when I got back to the States, I was really sick and I was hospitalized and the doctors couldn't figure out what it was. So they started putting me on antibiotic after antibiotic because they just assumed it was a bacterial infection. So I was on all these broad spectrum antibiotics, which decimated my healthy microbiome in my gut and left me with what's called C. diff colitis. So C. difficile colitis, where if you kill off the good bacteria, then you can get overgrowth of the bad bugs. In that case, it was C. diff. And I was really, really, really sick. So there was definitely a point in my life where I didn't know if I, was going to make it. And I think that really changed my whole trajectory because I became just completely obsessed with health and, living my most healthy life. And also, I guess during that time, I was so dependent and so grateful for the physicians, the doctors, who I interacted with, because they literally could make or break the chronic pain and potentially, help solve these, what seemed like a very confusing and complex problem for me that I just didn't understand. And so I think that played a huge role in the fact that I ended up going into medicine.
Oh my God, I adore you. And I never knew this part. And clearly you had the brains when you talk about where you went to school, top of your class, all the things. why skin? Like why was that the part you wanted to be in?
Yeah, I initially wanted to be a colorectal surgeon.
Oh, wow.
So I wasn't
Two
totally
ends
focused
of the
on
same person? Like,
skin was not like always the plan. But I ended up doing, and I was shadowing, all these surgeons. And I had a very like surgical mentality. I ended up marrying a surgeon. I just got along with that, like very like doer. And I love using my hands. I have very, very steady hands. So that was something that I loved. But I did a dermatology rotation in what was called an acne clinic at the University of Pennsylvania. And I remember the experience of treating these patients who would come, and they would, when you first met them, they wouldn't make eye contact. They had like hats on with the brims, or their hair was covering their face. And then as we cleared their skin with whatever modalities we were using, sometimes it was Accutane, sometimes it was dietary modifications, like different, multimodal approach. These kids, these teenagers at the time, so it was primarily mostly teenagers in this clinic, all of a sudden, like they were making eye contact,
oh,
they were exuding confidence. They were going out for like a part in the school play. They were asking out their school crush. Like it was completely transformative. Like that ability to empower someone. I think there's so many fields of medicine where, you make a difference, but the person doesn't see it. It doesn't affect their confidence, their self-esteem, their quality of life to the same degree. Like if you treat somebody's blood pressure, yeah, it's absolutely important, but there's something so, when it comes to the skin, you're literally wearing that organ
yep.
for the world to see and judge every single day. And it impacts the way that you interact with people around you in a way that, like, as a person who can help you feel more comfortable in your skin, it really empowers that person. And it's a very emotional experience. And I gravitated towards that, and I loved it. So, I said goodbye to the whole colorectal surgery concept, and I headed straight towards dermatology.
It's so sweet hearing that story today, because I didn't know that's why you got into it. But I remember a couple of years ago when I've been lucky enough to have a face I didn't hate. I didn't have a lot of insecurity about how I looked, and you feel like you're young most of your life. And then one day you wake up, and I remember looking in the mirror and being really unhappy. And I said to you, this is a new feeling for me, and I'm really uncomfortable. And I remember writing you after I saw you and saying, like, if you only knew what you gave me. And to hear you describe that's why you got in, I thought, oh my gosh, you really did know what you gave me. Like, that's why you wanted to do what you do. And I think that's so, it makes me emotional, because to know there are people that hide away, that was one of the first times I wanted to hide away. And you also cheer on all the successes, because every time I come to you and I'm like, all people talk about is my skin, you're like, yay, like you're so cute like that. Because I thought you were going to say something along the lines of, and this inspired me too, you were a sun worshiper. You had skin that was different at one point in your life, and you really worked to like revitalize yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that always gave me hope, because you look so untapped, untouched, and pure, that reassured me that you can make yourself better wherever you're at.
It's actually never too late to really like start taking control of your skin health. I think that so many people are under the impression like, oh, I already, I already had so much sun, like it's too late for me, whatever. But yeah, I grew up and I actually was a sun worshiper. I went to tanning salons regularly throughout high school. I had a membership, and this is so embarrassing, but I bought into that concept that like a base tan was protective. Like, oh, if you get a base tan, because I would get a burn if I just went out in the sun. But if I worked on this base tan, then it was better for my skin, right? And that's when, the tanning salons were advertising and saying like, our beds are UVA only, so we don't cause skin cancer. Of course, UVA also causes skin cancer. There's no such thing as a safe tan or a base tan, because even when you see your skin getting darker, that's actually a sign of DNA damage. My skin, I got married very young to my husband. We were engaged when I think I was married at 25. We were engaged at 24. And my wedding photos, I have more sun damage in my wedding photos than I do today. I have now so many excisions. I have actually scars all over my body. So dermatologists see dermatologists too. And I go once a year to my dermatologist who looks at my back and behind my ears and all the areas that I can't reach. And I've had so many severely dysplastic, pre-melanoma, like very atypical lesions because I had so much sun exposure as a kid. And quite honestly, my mother it was a generation where they just didn't know, it was like, I don't know if you remember, the orange gelée. Like, I remember my mom having this, like, it was like an SPF of like 4, I think it was called like a tanning gel or something. And it was supposed to get you more tan.
Yep.
So anyway, so that's where I came from. And, I did end up really reversing a tremendous amount of that sun damage. And, and you can do it on any budget. I think that a lot of people think like, oh, of course, like, you have access to, all the technologies, et cetera. But quite honestly, like just sticking to a really good skincare regimen that includes an antioxidant serum, a sunscreen, and some key ingredients, you can actually reverse a lot of that damage, a lot of those signs of aging on the skin, and really turn back the clock. And then once you turn back the clock, you can just freeze yourself in time. And there's ways of doing that proactively, even if you're starting later in life.
Well, and also there's always more sun damage you could be doing. So just by stopping that, the hats, the glasses, the coverage, you could say, I've already done as bad as I can, and we could show you could do worse. More damage comes.
It literally just protecting your skin and not using any sort of, I hate the word anti-aging, but not using any ingredients that turn back the clock, and literally just protecting your skin. There are studies showing that it can actually reverse signs of aging and make the skin look healthier over time. Just the protection, just the sunscreen, regular sun protection.
Wow. Now, anyone that's looked you up, if they didn't know you already, lately it's synonymous, skin cycling, Dr. Bowe, skin cycling, because you've been talking about this. And I remember you teaching like for so long, but it caught on and went viral in the last couple of years. So I know what skin cycling is, but I want to know, like, explain skin cycling and how we can all step up our own skincare and skin cycle our way to, as you call it, the Dr. Bowe glow.
So skin cycling, it's a deliberate strategic approach to taking care of your skin. So it's a less is more approach. It's really more about being purposeful and thoughtful in terms of taking care of your skin rather than just layering on different products. And the goal is to dramatically transform the skin, drive change in the skin, but minimize irritation in the skin. So the concept is that you're cycling through what I call push nights and recovery nights.
Yeah.
So there are nights when you're going to push the skin outside its comfort zone. And then there are nights that you're going to sort of take a step back and just really, really sort of nourish the skin barrier and hydrate the skin and give the skin a chance to recover. And I think a lot of people sort of can intuitively relate to that. Like if you work out and you work out really hard every day, like say that you go and you do like, heavy weights squats every day. And you go back to the gym the next day, and you're okay, heavy weight squats. And the next day, heavy weight squats. Like eventually you're going to injure your muscles. You're not going to see changes or benefits in your skin. Like athletes deliberately cycle through a protocol where on some days they'll do cardio, some days they'll do strength training, some days they'll do stretching, some days they have like active recovery, and that's when you can actually get stronger over time. Same thing with your brain, with your mind. Like if you just work through the weekend and you never build in time to actually like take a step back and give your mind a chance to sort of have downtime, you can't hit the ground running again Monday morning. Like it's just not healthy, right? So the same thing holds true with your skin. So on the classic skin cycling program, the one that went like mega viral with close to 4 billion views on TikTok and became like a global phenomenon, is a 4-night cycle. So night one is exfoliation night, where you actually use a leave-on exfoliating serum that gently dissolves away that uppermost layer of dead skin cells, and you get that glowing skin even overnight, but it sets you up for the rest of your skin cycling program. So night one is exfoliation night. Night two is what I call retinoid night. Retinoids are amazing ingredients, one of the most powerful ingredients in all of skincare. So it really deserves its own night. That's night two. And then those are your two push nights, where you're pushing skin outside its comfort zone. And then you follow it with two recovery nights, where you're not using any potentially irritating active ingredients, and you're just focusing on hydrating and nourishing the skin and repairing the skin microbiome. And then you just cycle back to night one, exfoliation night. So the 4-night cycle is sort of the classic one that really does work with most skin types and most skin goals, but something that's very important and a little more nuanced that doesn't, that comes across more in a video like this one, where we're able to like talk to each other for a longer period of time. But in like a 20-second viral clip, it's like, oh, it's 4 nights, that's it. So you actually want to be able to flex up or flex down your skin cycling program to meet your skin where it is. And so for example, like the way I skin cycle in the winter is different from the way that I skin cycle in the spring. You know, as the air gets warmer and less dry, I may be able to drop, for example, a recovery night or add retinoid night. So there's ways that there's like a gentle skin cycle, there's an advanced skin cycling program, but it never has to be complicated. The idea is that you're basically, balancing these nights. How many nights do you really need to recover versus how many nights can you push the skin? And part of it is intuitive, like listening to your skin. And if your skin feels like it's in a really good place, you're not tight, you're not dry, you can probably push the skin cycle to a little bit more of an advanced skin cycling protocol.
You did that with me, because I said, I'm not feeling a lot of the retinoid. Like there's no tingling, and you go, well, your skin may be telling you can handle one more night. So I went up on that, and that changed. That changed how I felt my skin.
Right. And you see faster results that way too. I mean, your skin is already starting in such a beautiful place because you've been so proactive and preventive with your skincare, but I have patients who are really struggling with like hyperpigmentation, dark spots, texture issues, big pores, or they feel like they have a lot of laxity. And when you're able to push the skin a little harder and have more of those active nights, more of those push nights, they're able to really, see those changes a little bit more quickly, a little bit more dramatically.
Now, when you say, so retinoid's a major part, you said it's important, it has a night of its own. Retinoid, like the word is blowing up on social media. Everyone's talking about it kind of taking the center stage, and it's retinoids are like the hottest skincare ingredient of 2023. But then what is retinol? Is this all one family, and what's the difference?
Okay, so retinoids are forms of vitamin A. And they are literally one of the most powerful, well-studied ingredients in all of skincare. So retinoids can not only help treat acne and prevent acne, but some retinoids can reverse signs of aging, like help with brightening dark spots, firming the skin, smoothing out lines and wrinkles. So one of the ways that I explain it to people is to think about retinoids in terms of like caffeine. So I'm going to make it break it down super easy. So let's start with retinoids that you get from your dermatologist. So there are prescription strength gels and creams that you can get from your dermatologist. They go by names like tretinoin or Retin-A. And imagine that that's like getting an IV drip of caffeine going straight into your vein. That is an intense amount of caffeine, right?
Yep.
But not everybody can tolerate that.
Yeah.
And that's the truth with these prescription strength retinoids, is that they can be very drying and irritating, especially if you have sensitive skin.
Okay.
So that's why a lot of people gravitate towards the over-the-counter retinoid. So the next one on the spectrum is retinol. Now, retinol is not retinol. We'll get there in a second. A lot of people are very familiar with retinol. Retinol is with an AL.
Okay.
So you can think about retinol like a double shot of espresso.
Okay.
It's not as intense as the IV caffeine, right? But it's significantly more powerful than your average cup of coffee.
Okay.
And that's because retinol is actually 10 times more bioavailable than retinol. So
Okay.
it's this incredibly powerful ingredient, but it can also be really well tolerated based on how it's formulated. So it's, if you're looking for a retinoid that's going to be, you know, high impact, but minimal irritation, that's a great one to have on your radar. And retinol is the one that I like to, you know, explain. It's more like your regular cup of coffee.
Okay.
So it's not as powerful as your IV drip of caffeine. It's 10 times less bioavailable than retinol. But if it's well formulated and it's clinically tested, it can be a solid option. And it has been for a very long time for a number of people. So, you know, there's a lot of different types of retinoids, but those are sort of the big ones that a lot of people talk about that they find very confusing. Retinoids is the big umbrella term.
Okay. You know what's interesting about that? Normally, when you think of what you can get from your doctors, it's always better. So when you look at the prices of what you're buying, you're kind of like, well, whatever we're getting, it's not going to be as strong as a doctor could give me. But what you're saying is that's actually good for most people. That, you know, it doesn't necessarily, especially if you have sensitive skin, it stands to irritate it less. So there's almost a full purpose and lane for over the counter type of options.
There are some people out there, especially people with very oily skin, who can tolerate the prescription strength tretinoin. Personally, I have more sensitive skin. If I try to use prescription strength tretinoin, about 3 to 4 days later, what happens is that I start getting red, blotchy, and peeling, especially right here around the nose, around the mouth area. And if I put on even my regular moisturizer, it starts to sting. It burns. It feels like you're reacting to the product that you're using, but you're not. It's because your skin is irritated. So, you know, even if I space it out, like even if I only use tretinoin once a week, predictably right around day 3 or 4, I'll have this reaction. And there's some people who can adjust to it. They can slowly, you know, increase their usage over time and like gradually get their skin used to it. But having treated thousands of patients for over a decade, there's a large number of people that just can't really get used to the prescription strength.
Right.
Or they feel like it's just so unpredictable the way that their skin responds to it that it's like it's not worth the drama. You know, it's sort of like, can we get great results, but without that sort of unpredictable, you know, dry, irritating, like who knows when I'm going to look like I'm, you know, a snake peeling and right. So
without the caffeine drip, like, can we just get a cup of
exactly,
coffee?
exactly.
Now, I want you to walk us through the AM and PM routine to maximize our skin cycling.
Okay. So in the morning, you don't actually cycle. In the morning, you actually want to use a very consistent routine because the morning is all about protecting your skin. It's that like you want to give your skin the best defense, right? So in the morning, you want to gently cleanse. You don't need to double cleanse in the morning. You're not taking off makeup. You really should only be removing your skincare from the night before. And then you pat dry. Then you want to put on some kind of a vitamin C antioxidant serum. That's going to really protect your skin from a lot of free radicals, pollution, sunlight. It boosts the effect of your sunscreen, right? So that's the first step. Then you can put on your moisturizer, and then you want to use a broad spectrum sunscreen. If you're working by a window, you're driving in a car, you're spending time outdoors, you don't have to wear sunscreen every single day. Like if you're working from home, you know, and you're not next to the window, you don't have to wear a sunscreen during the winter, or you can go with like, you know, if you're just casually, like every once in a while going by the window or something, you don't need to go with like a, you know, an SPF 50, like anything really strong, maybe an SPF 30. You don't have to stress about it so much. But during the spring and during the summer, when we start spending a lot of time outdoors, then I would say like you really want to make sure you're using that broad spectrum sunscreen and you're reapplying throughout the day. So that's, I mean, all the beauty that we do with skin cycling at night, if you're not protecting your skin during the day, throw it out the window, you're wasting your money. Okay, so at night, basic regimen. So night 1, exfoliation night. And you'll notice like none of these regimens are complicated. They're very, very simple. I rather people invest in a couple of products that are really well formulated and really deliver, as opposed to like layering, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 different steps in your skincare program. That gets really complicated. And the chances that those different products are going to be, you know, compatible in terms of stability and not cause pilling and not deactivate one another and not cause irritation in the skin. You know, it's just, it's like a kitchen sink approach to the skin. I don't like to take a kitchen sink approach. So exfoliation night, you cleanse, you pat dry because you want a nice even penetration of the exfoliating acids, but you never want the skin to be damp because that can increase your risk for irritation from exfoliating acids. And then you want to apply, I recommend a leave-on serum that has a blend of different acids, alpha hydroxy acids, beta hydroxy acids, polyhydroxy acids, because that's going to really target so many different areas in the skin. For example, the alpha hydroxy acid that's the most powerful is glycolic acid.
Yep.
And if you have a leave-on product with 8% glycolic acid or higher, it actually stimulates collagen synthesis in the skin. So it helps with firming.
Okay. Okay.
Salicylic acid is great for unclogging pores, preventing breakouts. Polyhydroxy acids are large molecules that actually hydrate while they gently dissolve away that uppermost layer of dead skin cells. So you sort of glow and hydrate at the same time. So I like a blend of those different acids.
Okay.
And then you put that on, wait 1 to 2 minutes. If your skin still feels a little tight or a little dry, you put a moisturizer on top. That's all you need.
Okay.
If your skin's super, super dry, you can layer something else on top. You can put, rosehip oil, grapeseed oil, squalene oil. You can put on like a recovery balm. You don't want to put anything too occlusive, too heavy on top of an exfoliating acid, because that can actually drive the acid unpredictably into the skin and increase your risk for irritation.
Okay. Okay.
You never want to like slug. You've heard of slugging.
Yes.
You never want to slug on exfoliation night. So with petroleum jelly or Vaseline or Aquaphor or CeraVe, like those are too heavy on top of exfoliation night.
Okay. Okay.
Night 2 is retinoid night. I'll show you what it looks like here because less is more with a retinoid. So this is retinol. So you want to apply, this is about a pea-sized amount. I got 2 pumps there. So you want to take that pea or that large pearl, and this is yellow. Yellow is the color of retinol when it's stable. And you dab that all over your face, like little dots all over your face. And then you rub it in.
Okay.
And then you take the same amount just for your neck and you dab it across your neck.
Okay.
And then you take about like 2 to 4 pumps for the chest and you rub it across the chest. And that you're going to rub it all in, wait 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay.
If your skin feels comfortable, you're done. If your skin still feels a little dry, needs a little extra moisture, you put a moisturizer on top.
Okay.
So, and that's retinoid night. So you really don't need, especially if you're new to retinoids, you don't need to use a whole lot of it. And in fact, that can lead to irritation. So like a large pea or a large pearl or two pumps, and then you just sort of evenly distribute that. Because for some people, it's not going to feel like it's enough,
Right.
And if you just start randomly pumping and spreading, you can end up using a little more than what your skin actually needs.
Okay.
So I think that like little dabbing technique.
That's a good technique. I've never done that one.
Just for retinoids, retinoids. And then on recovery nights, you cleanse. Here, if you want to use like a hydrating serum, like some people like to use like a hyaluronic acid serum or a niacinamide serum or some kind of a peptide serum, like something that's like a nice hydrating serum, you can do that as the first step.
Okay.
Then you want to put on your moisturizer. And then if you want to get a little heavier with that, like either with an oil that you're patting on or with more of a recovery balm, or if you love slugging, the idea of slugging, you can do that on your recovery nights. If you're not acne prone, then, but if you are, then you just want to be a little more careful with like how occlusive those products are that you're using.
Now, you mentioned earlier about how you vary your skin cycling based on the season and kind of the air and the climate. In general, what are some of the minor tweaks we need to be making to adapt it year round?
Yeah. So in the winter, because the air is so dry, I tend to build in more recovery nights. When I'm traveling, like I went to Deer Valley with my family, very high altitudes, very dry. There, I was just using recovery nights the entire vacation. I was absolutely using, my vitamin C, my sunscreen in the morning. A lot of people forget that, when it's snowing out, but actually the snow reflects a lot of that light. But in the spring, when the air gets warmer, it gets less dry. Spring is the ideal time to step up your skincare routine and push skin outside its comfort zone. So in the spring, I love to try to add retinoid nights to my patient skincare program. So like we try to add, if you can always start off with like 2 to 3 retinoid nights a week, but if your skin can tolerate it in the spring, I try to say like, let's see if we can step that up. Let's see if we can add an extra retinoid night.
Okay. One thing I want to ask you, and I have so many questions, and these are the types of things I end up like emailing you about, but what are some of the biggest skincare mistakes you see patients or people online making most commonly?
I'd say probably like over exfoliating, using too many exfoliating products or tools. And
Okay.
so they're, like I have a lot of patients who just use a washcloth to take off their makeup, and they'll use like an old washcloth. They'll be rubbing. Just that friction is actually pretty abrasive on the skin. Or I have a lot of patients who were sort of used to using like a scrub, and they felt like they weren't getting their skin clean unless they were using like one of those like sugar scrubs.
Yes.
They're okay for the body. It's like, it's okay for like elbows, your heels, your knees. I wouldn't use one of those physical, like a gritty scrub on the face, neck, or chest. It's just too abrasive. It can lead to trauma, and then it can actually lead to hyperpigmentation in the skin. So those are like that concept of sort of like, oh, I got to get really clean, so I'm going to go in there and scrub with either a loofah, a buff puff, a brush, a
Yep.
scrub. Like that's one of the most common mistakes that I see.
Well, you also mentioned earlier you'd rather see someone spend a little on some certain products, rather than trying to overpower. What are the lanes you spend on, and where do you save on?
So you want to invest in a vitamin C serum. Vitamin C is very challenging to stabilize. It is an ingredient that it actually, if you're going to get like a really stable form of vitamin C, sorry to get too technical, but like tetrahexyldecylosorbate, 3-O-ethyl-ascorbic acid, like there's certain forms of vitamin C that are really stable that don't break down right away, and they're expensive to formulate with.
Okay.
The packaging is also expensive because vitamin C is such an unstable ingredient. If it's exposed, if you can see the formula through the glass, that means that sun and UV light can see the formula through the glass and can
Right.
break it down. So you want something that's opaque. You want something in an airless pump. That packaging is expensive. So vitamin C serums, I would say, worth the splurge. Retinoids, especially like retinol, is such an exciting ingredient right now. Everybody's talking about retinol, and it's the ingredient that I formulated with for mine, but it's incredibly unstable. It is notorious for being it's like a diva ingredient. So to stabilize it was actually like a real time-consuming, huge effort to get that technology where it is stable and potent. So when you find like, oh, it's a dupe and it's got retinol on the ingredient list, and look, it's so inexpensive, like, is it stable? Is it potent? Ask the brand if they're doing independent clinical testing. Are they actually showing that it's stable and potent? Because it actually takes a certain investment to be able to do that. So that's where can you save money? So cleansers, you should not be spending a fortune on a cleanser. It's in short contact with the face, and then you're rinsing it off and it's going down the drain. So if you're relying on your cleanser to help with fine lines, wrinkles, hyperpigmentation, think twice. A poorly formulated cleanser can do damage. It can dry the skin. It can irritate the skin. But there's only so much you're going to get out of a really good cleanser just because of the nature of the product. It's not on your skin long enough.
Yep.
It's not there overnight to drive those meaningful changes in the skin. So definitely don't spend too much money on a cleanser, and don't get fooled with these. I think there's a lot of marketing when it comes to like more is better. For example, with like niacinamide. The studies show that niacinamide between 2 and 5%, that's the sweet spot. That's where you get all the benefit. And when you go higher than that, it doesn't give you any extra benefit. It just gives you irritation.
What is that in?
Niacinamide. There's niacinamide's in so many different products, and it doesn't have to be in its own product. But there's so many brands now coming out because they know that people are Googling niacinamide. It's like a great search engine, optimization ingredient. So people are putting in 10%, 20%, and they're making niacinamide serums that are just niacinamide with these high concentrations of niacinamide. And then people are saying like, oh, my skin's reacting. My skin's breaking out. That's because you're using too much niacinamide. Like more is not better. Right. So sometimes it's like, oh, it's marketing, like, oh, people are Googling it. And when they Google, they just assume like, oh, a higher concentration has to be more effective. And that can be a problem. So, with niacinamide, first of all, don't spend your money on a niacinamide serum. Niacinamide is in moisturizers, it's in other serums, like it's in sunscreens, it's in Elta MD. That's like a well-known sunscreen that a lot of my patients use. Like, you don't need to use your own dedicated niacinamide serum, and certainly don't spend money on a 10 or 20% niacinamide serum when we know that that's only going to increase your risk for irritation. It doesn't actually help you in terms of benefits.
Okay. What about moisturizers and SPFs?
Okay. So moisturizers, absolutely. It's actually worth the investment. It's the foundation of your skincare program. Okay. So, if you have a good moisturizer, like the first thing, like if I was on a desert island and I could only use one product, I have dry skin, and I need to have a really, really good moisturizer that doesn't clog my pores, that rebalances my skin microbiome, and that repairs my skin barrier. So that, I say, is worth the investment. And then what was the other question?
Moisturizer, SPF.
Sunscreen. So interestingly, there are some, it depends on what you're looking for. Like, some people really like a mineral sunscreen, but if you're open to a chemical sunscreen, right now, some of the most effective chemical sunscreens are coming from Korea. So for example, there's a brand called Beauty of Joshan, and they make an SPF 50 plus that it's like something like $12 if you get it online at styleavana.com. It's very, very effective. The sunscreen filters in that product are not FDA approved in the US. Okay. So if people are very concerned about safety and they're not sure, I really want to try to use something, that's FDA approved, and or some people just really love the idea of using a mineral sunscreen, like primarily a zinc sunscreen, then that sunscreen is not going to be a great option for you. But for people who are open to that, it's a very affordable product that is very effective.
I have to ask you about this because it's something I think about all the time. This is when you put stuff on, even in skin cycling, you say, wait 1 to 2 minutes. When you're doing skin products, what is important to leave and dry, and what can you just do quicker? Like, how important is that step in between?
Yeah. So like in the morning, if you go really quickly with certain products, you can end up with something called pilling.
Okay.
So it's when if you've ever rubbed your skin and you feel like little tiny, like white balls, like coming off, and you're like, what's going on? Why is it like doing? Sometimes it's because you're sort of like rushing through too many steps in the morning, and like, oh, this, and then this, and then this. And those products, especially if they're from different brands, are not necessarily compatible. So there's things called polymers, and like sometimes they don't sit well on top of each other. And for example, like if you have silicone in one of those products, like dimethicone or a type of silicone, that tends to, if it's layering on top of something else, it tends to increase your risk for pilling. Okay. So a lot of people hate that experience. You also don't want your skin to be damp when you're applying either exfoliating acids or retinoids. Okay. Those are really powerful ingredients that if the skin is damp, it can actually cause more of them to like higher concentrations to dive into the skin, but in sort of an unpredictable way. And so it can lead to like little patches of irritation. So I always say you want your skin to be dry when you're applying an exfoliating acid or you're applying a retinoid. So say you're using like a brightening serum first, or a peptide serum or a hyperpigmentation serum, like you've got some kind of serum that you love using. You cleanse the skin, you put on your hydrating serum, your brightening serum, your peptide firming serum. I would say wait 1 to 2 minutes for that to absorb into the skin, then put on your retinoid, or then put on your exfoliating acid. Something that you can do really quickly is you can put on, if you have a hyaluronic acid serum, like something that's just hydrating on the skin, you can throw that on damp skin, and you can put on your moisturizer right on top of it, all while everything's still damp. Okay. So those aren't irritating ingredients. Those aren't potentially irritating actives like squalane, ceramides, hyaluronic acid. Those are ingredients that really are just nourishing and hydrating the skin. Okay. So you can sort of throw them all on very quickly while the skin is damp, and it's not going to cause a problem.
And I also have to address your products, because I, for years, would tell you knew all the answers, and you always had Shop My Shelf and things where you would recommend things, and you always did the stuff that's sometimes hard for regular people to understand about, is it independently tested? Is that, you asked it, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I just cheat off your homework. But forever I teased you. I was like, yeah, when are you coming out with something? And you'd always said like, oh, I'm working on stuff. I'm working on it. And then one day I said that and you're like, oh, like we're getting ready to announce. And I was like, finally, because the thing I love about you is your integrity was so strong to everything from the packaging to how you treat skin from the outside in and the inside out, because it'd be ignorant not to. I know people can get away with that with marketing, but it just doesn't make sense to our biology. But you have stayed true to that with every product, and I've gotten to try every one, and I am obsessed that I know if I get something with your name on it, that you would never recommend, mark anything that you did not stand for 100%. And as a consumer, I just want you to know, a fan, a friend, I trust you so implicitly in a world where I don't trust much. So congratulations on all that you're doing with this line. I've always been obsessed with you, but you finally like literally solved a problem for me that I keep like grabbing and like excitedly can't wait for everyone to try them and see them.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for saying that. And it's one of those things that, as a brand founder, there's this excitement to new launches. Like, oh, we're coming out with this. We're coming out with this. But I made a promise that every time that I launch something, I want it to be truly groundbreaking in terms of like completely disruptive, like different and better than anything else that's on the market. I hand select every single ingredient and I literally custom build the formulations from the ground up. There's so many brands out there that'll take like a base formula, throw on like 2 or 3 buzzy ingredients. And the turnaround time is like 6 months between the time. Oh yeah, we need this type of serum. We'll get it out on the market. Mine take years. They take like literally 17, 18, 19, 20 iterations where I'm working very, very closely with the chemist to stabilize and make sure that those ingredients are active, are stable, are clinically proven. And that's a tremendous investment in terms of time, energy, and funding that could be spent on marketing. Yeah. And so for me, when I decided to launch a product line, like that meant everything to me. It was that if I'm going to put my name on something, like people have to really know that it's going to be truly incredible in terms of the formulation. So I love that you're saying that. And I feel like that's why we've been so successful in such a short period of time. It's just mind blowing that, how quickly we've grown, and literally it's like, it's a baby. It's not even a year yet. And it's just the reviews, the product reviews and the loyalty with people coming back and repurchasing all the refills, because I'm crazy about sustainability and refills and not hurting the planet. But it's just, it's really incredible to be able to reach that many people and see the results that we're getting.
Well, it flies in the face of business. We live in a country that's a free market. It's all about money. That's great. It serves people well, but it does start to remove a little trust when that enters. And the thing I love about you is you so believed in the products and the science. And you're like, I remember coming in, you're like, Sara, look at this. And you like pop out of a test bottle. You're like, this is the color it should be. Do you see this? And like, you're like, I don't mean to reduce your intelligence, but you're like sweetly nerdy about it. And you're like, do you see this? Now this is what it should feel like. And you're like doing this. And I'm like, literally, I love your passion, and you made it actionable. And now people like us have like everyday people have access to all that you learned and knew and loved. And it just
you need somebody who's obsessed with formulation to create. Like I'm literally thinking about it all day long, every day. Like I love it and I'm passionately obsessed with it. And I'm a consumer. Like I use it all. Sometimes you get into a room with people, and I used to be a spokesperson, a consultant for so many different product lines. And half the time, the men in the room who were, hiring me and taking my advice, they didn't even use the product. They didn't even know, like, they're like, oh yeah, my wife tells me that. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you're not even like using so I'm a research scientist. I'm literally like holding, the standards to the same level as if I were submitting it to the JAMA or the JAD or another peer-reviewed scientific publication. I'm talking to my patients every day. And I'm also the consumer. Like I'm actually using it and having certain expectations. And I have sensitive skin, but I'm also prone to breaking out. And, those, like taking all those lenses together, you need somebody who's like living and breathing product development to create really high quality products. And there's so much noise with skincare. It's just like, it's so easy, for somebody with a big name to be like, oh, my marketing team is thinks, okay, so fragrance isn't selling very well right now. So I, and they talked about like vodka, but I think I'm going to go into skincare. Like,
Yes.
like that's a very different decision,
And your product and your expertise and background speaks for itself. So what I love is you haven't thrown in, you were like, I put all my money into the product and the science. I am not going to lean into marketing, and I was like, that's amazing because like your stuff sells itself. So
but that's what I did with my practice too. Like, I feel
yeah,
like when I started injecting and I started, talking to patients, and it was word of mouth. Like when you make an impact in somebody's life, a really positive impact, they can't help but talk about it. And
yep.
they talk about it with people that they love, people that they want to benefit from. Like they go to their sister, their mother, their friend, and they share that information. And that was it was a risk when it came to the product line. I was like, look, I'm not going to do the paid media and social and et cetera. I'm not going to spend the money the way the typical brands do, but I'm going to spend the money in the actual quality of the product. And I believe that if people see and feel that difference, they won't be able to help themselves. They'll tell their friends and family. And I luckily, thank goodness for my team that it was a good bet. It worked out for me. But yeah, so I feel like for me, that's my North Star. Like science is my North Star. And if I just keep focused on that and ignore the noise and the trends and the market research and like, what's hot and buzzy right now, and I just focus on like, okay, what does the science show? What does my clinical experience tell me? Then I will always be headed in the right direction.
Well, you are my North Star. And I think a lot of people's North Star when it comes to not only skincare and products, but honestly, your expertise extends to just wellness. And I think of you when I think of a question. I'm not going to have you perform surgery on me, though. If I had to pick someone, I would pick you. But I come to you for a lot because I think I really appreciate all that you bring to all of us. And so you are a North Star, and I thank you for that. But I can't let you go before we play Just Curious. It's a rapid fire question game.
Okay.
A lot easier than the science you were dropping.
Okay, I'm ready.
What is something that brought you joy today?
My daughter kissed me on the lips this morning. Just unsolicited. She's like, Mommy, I love you. So cute.
What do you wish you could tell your younger self?
That the people bullying me on the bus in middle school, it was about them and their insecurities, not me. My mother tried to tell me that. My sister tried to tell me that, but I was like, you're just saying that because you're my mom. I didn't believe her. And I wish I had understood that a little bit better at the time when they were saying that I was painting freckles on my face and making fun of me on the bus, the older girls.
Now people design filters to try to get those same freckles. So take that, bus people.
There you go.
What's on your bucket list?
What's on my bucket list, Sarah, honestly, like I feel like I'm actively fighting the need to look at a bucket list because I need to focus on living in the moment. Like I need to focus on like I am too project oriented and too goal oriented. And so I'm like, no bucket list right now. Just live in this. Like, yes, exactly. Be here.
Now, what skincare ingredient can you not live without?
Probably ceramides. My skin is dry and my skin is miserable if it's dry. I can't tolerate any of the beneficial active products if my skin barrier is not healthy.
Who has impacted you the most in this life?
Honestly, I think it would be my father. So he was fully deaf. We grew up signing and speaking in our home. And my dad was an activist for people with disabilities. He's the reason we have closed captioning for the hearing impaired.
Yeah.
And his father of 504, Americans with Disabilities Act. He was just an absolute incredible human. He passed away of lymphoma years ago. But my mom was a sign language therapist. My dad was deaf. And so just growing up and having him impart that knowledge that like you see through a disability to the person and almost like see what others perceive as a limitation as a challenge. He just had such an incredible perspective when he looked at the world.
Was he born deaf?
He actually lost his hearing when he was 3. He had a really high fever
Okay.
And they gave him an antibiotic called gentamicin, which caused permanent neural damage. And he completely lost it. Like he couldn't even hear vibrations. Like he was completely deaf. So he could sing like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Because when he was a baby, he learned, so he could speak, like his voice was very monotone. He didn't understand like the cadence of speech. And people made fun of us our entire childhood. Like we were, out like shopping, food shopping or anything like that. People would just laugh and stare because they would hear him speak and just assume it was an intellectual deficiency. Yeah, he was like literally brilliant. So just the irony. And I remember I would get very defensive and very upset. And he would say to me, like, honey, it's our job to teach them and educate them. Like they maybe have never met a deaf person before. Like this is an opportunity to teach them, right? And just like he just never he could have been so angry at the world. Life was so hard for him in so many ways. And he never came across as angry. He was genuinely forgiving and just cared about just making the world a better place for both people with disabilities and to help encourage awareness, for people who maybe didn't interact with, somebody who was deaf or blind or had another disability.
Now, is that how he met your mom?
Yeah, actually, he was her professor at NYU.
Stop it. So there's a little scandal behind it. I love it.
Totally politically incorrect. I don't know when they got together technically, but yes.
I'm here for it. We don't have to do that math. So the last question is, what is something you're curious about right now?
I'm like this morning, deep dive in PubMed on the pathway of hyperpigmentation and just every single step. Dark spots are so challenging for so many people. Melasma, sunspots, hyperpigmentation after acne. It can really make people so self-conscious. Like sometimes the acne is not as bad as the dark marks left over for months. And I feel like I really want to get to the bottom of like the right way to really treat those dark spots in the most effective way. So I've been taking this deep dive into the science.
Still trying to nerd out.
I'm always nerding out.
Well, Dr. Bowe, I can't thank you enough for one, taking the time because you're in high demand. Two, always sharing your secrets because some people feel they're more valuable when they keep them. You give them away like air. And three, for honestly putting all of it into products that the homework's done. Like, it really feels good to get something and say, I have no questions because I know Dr. Bowe already did the homework. So thank you for everything. And thank you for keeping my skin beautiful.
I thank you for inspiring so many people. I love you. This was such an honor. I couldn't imagine a better way to spend the last hour.
Mwah, mwah, mwah. Thank you, Dr. Bowe, so much for taking the time to chat with me and share all of this knowledge with all of us. Big things can happen if you remain curious. What are you curious about right now? I'll see you next time.